Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a massive, fierce debate that's currently unfolding in the WNBA around Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White. At the absolute center of this storm, incredibly physical plays, some highly unexpected loyalties, and a fundamental clash over how to protect star players on the court. Now listen, we aren't taking any sides today. We are just going to look closely at the evidence, the direct quotes, and the history to explain exactly why this situation has completely exploded.
Okay, let's dive into this. This right here is the central mystery that has sports commentators like Stephen A. Smith and literally thousands of fans absolutely baffled. Usually, when a player takes a really hard, dangerous hit, you totally expect their head coach to be the first one off the bench, right? Defending them, getting in the ref's ear, demanding a call. But recently, in Indiana, viewers noticed the exact opposite happening. We're seeing a head coach seemingly offering grace and defense to the opposing players who are committing flagrant fouls against her own roster. So to understand why on earth this is happening, we have to look at the incident that lit the match.
So where did this all start? Let's take a look at the catalyst, a genuinely shocking play over at the United Center. To really grasp the backlash here, you need to understand the severity of this specific play. Picture this. The United Center was loud. The Fever and the Sky were going back and forth. And then suddenly, the entire building goes dead silent. The sequence of events escalated incredibly fast. First, you've got Indiana's Sophie Cunningham on a dead sprint on a fast break, with no defender immediately near her. Second, DiJonai Carrington closes in fast from behind. But instead of a normal defensive contest at the rim, she winds up and swings her entire left arm right across Cunningham's neck and head, sending her crashing hard to the floor. And finally, while officials initially called it a flagrant 1, a quick video review led them to upgrade it to an automatic ejection, a flagrant 2. The referees clearly determined this was an excessive, non-basketball play with some real dangerous force behind it.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the immediate aftermath captured by the broadcast cameras. Because frankly, the foul itself was enough to make fans furious. But it was Coach Stephanie White's reaction in the literal seconds that followed that turned this from a bad foul into a massive controversy. As Cunningham lay there on the floor, actually bleeding, Coach White jogged straight past her own injured player. Her very first move? To go check on Carrington, the opposing player who had just committed the foul. Freeze frames of this exact moment immediately started circulating online, leaving fans completely and utterly stunned.
So when asked about this bizarre moment, Coach White claims she simply didn't see the play in real time. Well, as you can imagine, this explanation drew some incredibly sharp criticism from prominent analysts. Stephen A. Smith pointedly asked the question you see right here. He argued that it is literally a coach's job to watch the game up and down the court. Furthermore, sideline footage clearly showed Coach White's body facing the exact direction of the fast break, with her eyes tracking Cunningham the entire time. For the critics, the excuse simply did not match the video evidence.
And if you thought the on-court reaction was wild, the fallout from the post-game press conference took things to a whole other level.
Yeah, if the on-court reaction sparked a fire, this press conference basically poured gasoline on it. Take a look at Coach White's exact words when reporters asked her directly about that clothesline foul. She reiterated that she didn't see it in real time, but then she immediately pivoted. She said, "One of the things about Nay is that she's going to play her butt off, man. She's going to compete. Nobody's going to go walking in for a layup, and so I don't oppose the hard foul." She also threw in that she didn't think the hit was intentional. But notice what is glaringly missing from this quote. There is absolutely zero mention of Sophie Cunningham, no update on her condition, and no public support whatsoever for her own player who was left bleeding on the hardwood.
The reaction to that press conference escalated way beyond your typical sports chatter. Even in Carrington's own home building, fans were chanting Cunningham's name. Online, the word gaslighting began trending heavily among Fever fans who felt their coach was completely dismissing the violence of the play just to protect an opponent's image. Then, at the very next home game, something incredibly rare happened. Indiana fans actively booed Coach White during team introductions. You almost never see that. And it even transcended sports entirely when Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith publicly posted that the Fever needed to let White go, stating that no solid coach takes the side of an opponent committing a flagrant foul on their own roster.
But wait, it actually gets deeper. Critics argue this isn't just a one-off incident, it's part of a much larger pattern of behavior. Let's look at the Caitlin Clark incidents.
To fully understand the depth of fan frustration here, we have to rewind a bit. Months before the Cunningham foul, the Fever faced another highly controversial moment. Earlier in the season, Alyssa Thomas drove a closed fist directly into Caitlin Clark's throat during a live game. There was no ball around, it was just a forceful, direct hit to the neck of the franchise player. Naturally, it sparked immense outrage among fans and analysts, many of whom called it one of the dirtiest plays of the entire year.
And this brilliantly illustrates why Fever fans are so deeply frustrated right now. While Coach White initially expressed some anger over the Clark hit, within a week her tone completely shifted to defending the physicality. She described Alyssa Thomas as just playing the game hard. Now, compare that to months later, her defense of Carrington was that she will play her butt off. It's almost the exact same defensive language, recycled for two completely different opponents committing really dangerous fouls against two different Indiana players.
This strangely passive approach was totally crystallized in a July 15th press conference regarding the physical beating Caitlin Clark takes on a nightly basis. Coach White stated, there's a level of physicality that they're able to play with against her. I'm not exactly sure why, but it just is what it is. For commentators analyzing this whole situation, this quote is a massive red flag. They argue that when a head coach responds to targeted aggression with a passive shrug, it just is what it is. It essentially signals to the rest of the league that hitting Indiana's players carries no real consequences.
So, why the intense loyalty to these specific opponents? Well, that brings us to the Connecticut connection and the idea of the architect of aggression.
Let's move on and see how this builds into arguably the most fascinating piece of this entire puzzle. Why does Coach White consistently find herself defending these specific opposing players? Well, look at the timeline. From 2023 to 2024, right before she ever put on an Indiana Fever jacket, Stephanie White was the head coach of the Connecticut Sun. And who were the key players executing her system during that highly successful run? DiJonai Carrington, Alyssa Thomas, and Duana Bonner. Yep, the exact same players who are now delivering these controversial hard fouls against the Fever roster.
So the crucial point is this. Coach White is not just a neutral observer to this aggressive style of basketball. As analysts point out, she was literally the architect of it. During her tenure in Connecticut, she engineered a defensive identity built right on the razor's edge of the rules, relying on players like Carrington and Thomas to act as her enforcers. That exact system earned her WNBA Coach of the Year. Critics argue that when she defends these hits at the press conference podium today, it's not confusion on her part. It is a deeply ingrained loyalty to a physical style of play that she spent years building and profiting from. Old habits, it seems, just don't disappear because you switch sidelines.
Which brings us to, right now, the Fever's championship window, and what is ultimately at stake.
Why is this controversy boiling over right this second? Because the stakes for Indiana have truly never been higher. You have Caitlin Clark putting up an absolutely historic MVP-level season. You have Kelsey Mitchell setting WNBA records for consecutive 20-point games. Add in an elite supporting core of Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and Sophie Cunningham, and the math is incredibly clear. This is a team built to win, and their championship window is kicking wide open for 2026. Fans and analysts firmly believe a roster this talented simply cannot afford a head coach who appears to pick the wrong side when our own players are left bleeding on the floor.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question echoing across sports media and the entire WNBA fan base right now. Looking at the on-court incidents, the press conference defenses, and her deep historical ties to the very architects of this aggression, does Stephanie White deserve to keep coaching this championship-caliber roster, or should she be fired? It's a hugely complex clash of team loyalty, coaching philosophy, and player safety. Weigh the evidence on the slides we've covered today. What do you think is the right move for the franchise? Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and always keep questioning what's beneath the surface.